This presentation is called How to Optimize Synergetic Effects of Read-alouds with Young Children, enhancing preschool children's emergent literacy through read-alouds embedded in thematic work. My name is Ola Damber. I'm from Umeå University in the very north of Sweden. This work was carried out in collaboration with my colleagues Jan Nilsson and Camilla Olsson at two southern universities in Sweden.
Click OK. Pausa.
This presentation is called How to Optimize Synergetic Effects of Read-alouds with Young Children, enhancing preschool children's emergent literacy through read-alouds embedded in thematic work. My name is Ola Damber. I'm from Umeå University in the very north of Sweden, and this work was carried out in collaboration with Jan Nilsson and Camilla Olsson at two southern universities in Sweden. Our theoretical framework is based on a sociocultural approach to literacy. We have an interest in emergent literacy, and we employ the ideological versus the autonomous model of literacy as described by Street. We are also interested in critical perspectives, and in particular the four resources model as described by Fribody and Luke, where they state that children's decoding, their participation in text, their use of text, and their critical perspectives on text develop in parallel, which means that it should really start in preschool. Our theoretical framework builds on a sociocultural approach to literacy. We have an interest in emergent literacy, and we employ the ideological versus the autonomous view on literacy as described by Street. We are also interested in critical perspectives, and in particular the four resources model as described by Fribody and Luke, where they state that decoding, taking part in texts, making use of texts, and developing critical perspectives, that these components develop in parallel, which means in this case that it should be started in preschool. Our theoretical framework is based on a sociocultural approach to literacy. We are very much influenced by emergent literacy, and we also employ the ideological versus the autonomous view on literacy as denoted by Street. We have also an interest in critical perspectives, and in particular, as described by Fribody and Luke, the four resources model, where they state that decoding, taking part in texts, Our theoretical framework is built on a sociocultural approach to literacy. We have a big interest in emergent literacy, and we employ an ideological versus an autonomous view on literacy in our analysis, and that is from Street. We also have an interest in critical perspectives, and in particular the four resources model as described by Fribody and Luke, where they state that decoding, participation in texts, use of texts, and the development of critical perspectives do take place in parallel, which means that this is all our theoretical framework is a socio-cultural approach to literacy with a great interest in emergent literacy. We employ the ideological, this is the autonomous view on literacy as denoted by Street. We also have an interest in critical perspectives, and in particular the four resources model as described by Freebody and Luke, where decoding, taking parts in texts, using text, and developing critical perspectives are seen as resources that develop in parallel. And that means that preschool is where it all starts. Thematic work is for us an ideal situation for literacy events, embedding literacy events and meaning making in a wider learning context. Linkages do occur between the children's world and the words in their everyday experiences. And of course this means working across the curriculum. Thematic work has a role in our studies as embedding literacy events and meaning making in a wider learning context, with linkages between the children's world, their words, and their everyday experiences. Of course, this is working across the curriculum, and the ideal that we see are polyphonic classrooms where the children's voices are given weight. The background for the present study is a formal study with the objective to describe and analyze how read-alouds were carried out in 40 Swedish preschools. Students provided data, carried out observations, and they also wrote narratives for us to analyze. The observation schedules were first tested by the students and then revised slightly. They asked questions about length and frequencies of read-alouds, how were the books chosen, who initiated activities, what kind of activities, spontaneous play after reading, learning context, the occurrence of phonics exercises, the provision of books, and so on. The results were a bit depressing. Reading took place not more, but The results were a bit depressing, actually. Reading hardly occurred more than once a day, and often in connection with meals. Follow-up dialogues only occurred in 27% of the reading sessions. Follow-up play occurred only 9% of the reading sessions, and 94% of the read-alouds were solitary events, not embedded in any learning context. Most books were randomly chosen by the preschool teachers or children, and the read-alouds were seldom planned as the language games were. Our conclusions were that read-alouds were not very often planned, and thus not very valued activities in that respect. Instead, a kind of routinized activity carried out with the purpose to calm the children down. We compared linguistic focus, knowledge focus and social focus, and concluded that the read-alouds primarily had a social, let us call it disciplinary focus. Thus the present study was carried out, an exploratory study with a dual objective. Inspired by action research, the one purpose was to enhance the teachers' reflection on their practice and their knowledge regarding didactics concerning read-alouds and children's development of emergent literacy. The actual research question was to explore how the preschool practice is shaped and why the practice takes this shape. Our study was carried out as a case study of a preschool unit with 3 preschool teachers and 1 part-time assistant. 21 children aged 3 to 5, where thematic work was carried out based on work with children's books. The unit of analysis was the work teams work with read-alouds within the frames of thematic work and the scaffolding of the children's engagement in literature, reading and early literacy activities. We employed a wide range of sources of evidence: documentation, archival records, open-ended interviews, focus group interviews, direct observations with both low and high structure. The observations of read-alouds were highly structured. Physical artifacts and teacher diaries, an important source of information. The theme that the teachers worked with was outsidership. The teachers also perceived that they had some problems with including all the children in the group, so that was one reason for choosing outsidership. You see a book here with a frog and a rat. The book is called The Frog and the Stranger, and it's a rat who is not included. Who's having some problems, not being really a nice animal. We also the theme that the preschool teachers had chose to work with was outsidership, and they were experiencing some problems with including all the children in the group, so that was one reason for choosing that topic. The book, you see, is called The Frog and the Stranger. The stranger is a rat, and he's having a hard time. Besides the book, you have one excerpt from one of the teacher's diaries. She is writing: Emma is a quiet and shy little girl, only 3 years old. That she was the first one who first wrote a letter to the rat was not what I had expected. A long letter. She also engaged in the challenge to write the address on the envelope, which indicates that she believes that she can handle challenges. It made me feel really happy to watch her work today. And this sort of events, we also had the opportunity to observe when they happened. And we could see much of this kind of spontaneous or inspired writing and also reading. On this slide you see illustrations of the theme chosen by the preschool teachers, which was outsidership. And they had some problems with outsidership in their group of children. So that was one reason for them for choosing this theme. The book is called The Frog and the Stranger. The rat is the stranger, and the rat is having a hard time getting accepted by the other animals. You also have an excerpt from one of the teacher diaries to illustrate how the whole way of working was also used to include children. She wrote, "Emma is a quiet and shy little girl, only 3 years old. That she was the one who first wrote a letter to the rat was not what I had expected. A long letter. She also engaged in the challenge to write the address on the envelope, which indicates that she believes that she can handle challenges. It made me feel really happy to watch her work today." And this was then an incident that we also had the opportunity to watch in real life. Our results then, the children really took this theme very seriously, and we could see many spontaneous literacy activities taking place during our 3 weeks of observations. At times the theme was brought up by the children or the teachers during meals, but apart from that, it was, Our results then, the children really took this theme very seriously, and they were very engaged in the theme. We could also see how many spontaneous literacy activities took place during our 3 weeks of observations. At times the theme was brought up by the children or the teachers during meals, where they also discuss how to behave if you want to be nice to everybody. Also concerning how to ask for the ketchup and things like that. Reading took place between 2 and 3 times a day, but the planned reading sessions only took place twice a week, and that's when they worked with the books chosen for their thematic work. The sessions lasted between 5 and 15 minutes, but there was also a bookshelf above a sofa in the kitchen, which generated many spontaneous read-alouds where the children read to their friends. The preschool teachers initiated literacy activities twice a week. The preschool teachers initiated literacy activities in connection with the thematic reading sessions, but still a majority of the children viewed themselves as readers and writers, and they certainly did express thematic expectations. When they saw the books connected to the theme, they got very curious and alert, and they expected something interesting to happen. The preschool teachers initiated activities like writing letters to the characters, drawing pictures of the characters, sending pictures to the characters, and also building houses for the characters to live in. The preschool teachers initiated literacy activities twice a week in connection with their thematic reading sessions. Still, a majority of the children viewed themselves as readers and writers, and they certainly did express thematic expectations. When the preschool teachers brought out the books they were using for the thematic work, the children got very alert and excited, and they knew that something interesting was going to happen. And examples of such activities were writing letters to the characters in the book, drawing the characters, constructing homes for the characters to live in, playing with some soft animals that the preschool teachers used to dramatize the stories they were reading. The children also showed reading comprehension strategies. Even 3-year-olds knew how to turn the pages back and forth to enable them to read a story in the correct way. The preschool teachers, they really changed their way of introducing books and also how to follow them up during our stay. And for instance, the number of open-ended questions increased notably during our observations. However, we also identified areas of development. Firstly, the organizational structure counteracted the preschool teachers' ambition to read, and at many times also the children's spontaneous literacy activities, because there was a schedule which clashed with the kids' biorhythm. The fact that the unit was understaffed also made this organizational structure even more rigid. We believe that 2 planned reading sessions a week is really too little if your aim is to letting the theme permeating the whole week's activities. Planned phonics sessions were also carried out, and they were not at all embedded in the learning context. So we would rather have seen more of teachers' spontaneous scaffolding when individual children were working with their reading and writing, and not having 10 or 20 children sitting in a circle working with similar phonics exercises. To increase reliability, these analyses that we have made are characterized by triangulation. Data, investigator, theory, and methodological triangulation. Our conclusions are that despite an ambition to focus the children's meaning-making and spontaneous literacy activities on traces of an autonomous view of literacy, creates a focus on skills not being embedded, in this case, in the theme. We do believe that teachers' questioning techniques and the children's polyphonic participation may be further developed as the teacher's knowledge about thematic work and holistic approaches to emergent literacy. Just there. We conclude that thematic work seems to inspire emergent literacy behaviours, as well as the children's interest in fiction, but despite an ambition to focus the children's meaning-making and spontaneous literacy activities, an autonomous view of literacy seems to create a focus on skills not being embedded in the theme. We do believe that teachers' questioning techniques and the children's polyphonic participation may be further developed, as may the teacher's knowledge about thematic work and holistic approaches to emergent literacy. Based on the two studies we've conducted, we do believe that the reading rest seems to be a deeply rooted phenomenon in the preschool culture, and we believe it even sets the agenda to a large extent. We wonder if the reading rest is a consequence of the autonomous view of literacy. And it seems like preparations for decoding rule out polyphonic meaning making, which stimulates critical awareness. We believe that this is an important mission for us as researchers and as teacher educators, really to make things change. This figure symbolizes the results of both the first and the second study. The circles, the red circles, show where we find the focus in the literacy activities and the read-alouds in the second study. The blue circles show where we found the focus in our first study. Perhaps we would have expected larger differences between the two studies, but you can still see that the circles in the red circles from the second study, they are closer to one another, thus more depicting an holistic approach to emergent literacy. But we believe that the blue circles reflect more of a view of literacy that is found in school. So we think it's a very important task to let emergent literacy thrive in the preschools if we want kids to engage in negotiations of meaning, and if we want them to trust their own perspectives and their own views on texts. This figure depicts the essence of the analysis in both the first and the second study. The blue circles are from the first study. The red circles are from the second study, and they show how the focus is directed towards skills aspects, cognitive aspects, and really social aspects as a disciplinary focus. Perhaps we would have thought that these two pictures would have been more different, that the differences should have been larger in the second study. Still, we do believe that there is a difference, and as you can see, the red circles are not that far away from one another as they are in the blue circles, thus depicting a bit more holistic focus. We also believe that the blue circles show how literacy often is perceived in a school context, and we would like to advocate an emergent literacy focus which portrays even more of a holistic focus. So we believe that we can this figure depicts the essence of the analysis concerning both the first and the second study. The first study, the differences between linguistic focus, knowledge focus, and a social disciplinary focus, is illustrated by the blue circles. The red circles belong to the second study, and as you can see, the red circles are not that far away from another, thus depicting a more holistic focus. Still, I think we perhaps expected that the holistic quality would have been even stronger. The blue circles, in our interpretation, do depict the way literacy often is perceived in school, and we would like to advocate more of a holistic focus, more of an emergent literacy focus in preschools. If our aim is to stimulate children to develop their own voices, making their voices heard, and engaging in negotiations of meaning, something we believe is utterly important to start early if the school system is gonna be more inclusive than it is today. I do apologize for the bad quality of the sound, and I thank you so much for listening. If you want to contact me and have interest in the study, feel free to do so. Thank you.